Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Birmingham Tech Week keynote session for this afternoon. And today we've got a really kind of important topic to discuss: digital skills and diversity. And it's all about planning for the future. And we've got four fantastic panelists joining us, and we're going to introduce them just in a little while. So, of course, this week is being run in association with some of our lead partners. We've got Tech Nation, the West Midlands Growth Company, and Department for International Trade. Great to see those organisations supporting the week, but also for the work they do across the region and also the country as well, supporting kind of tech talent and entrepreneurs. But also for the work they do internationally as well, promoting Birmingham and the West Midlands and also encouraging inward investment. And of course, this week wouldn't be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. Lead sponsor, NatWest, who do an amazing job around entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs and everyone in business across the city, especially around their entrepreneur accelerator. And then we've got Codher, BJSS, Sidetrade, and BMET. And today's day is all around people and culture, and that's why we've got Culture Group as our kind of lead sponsor for today. So I'm just going to kind of say a few words about Culture. So Culture Recruitment are a dynamic and rapidly expanding Birmingham-based agency, founded only 3 years ago by Jamie Wills and Lawrence Sidwell, following extensive careers working for large global recruitment businesses. They share and mirror Birmingham Tech Week's passionate ethos and values in adding value in giving back to the community. Culture Recruitment has extensive and proven experience in tech sector, providing skills in marketing, sales, and technology roles, as well as running some of the largest communities around thought leadership and delivering that free to people across the region. But one thing that I love about Culture is the work they do in the community. So they were actually awarded the best supporter of Cure Leukemia, and also the work they do as well with Suited for Success. So thank you from all of us for all the work you do in the community as well. And of course, thank you to all our partners involved. Shout out, as I've been doing all week really, to a few. So to DCMS for supporting us, for Silicon Canal, for all the work Silicon Canal does in tech and the tech community, and the West Midlands Combined Authority, and the two chambers as well, who have been massive supporters of ours, both the Greater Birmingham Chamber and the Commonwealth Chamber as well. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce your host for today. And we've got Joel Blake, OBE, who is the founder and CEO at GFA Exchange. Joel is also the president of the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce, newly appointed president, I should say. So welcome, Mr. President. And Joel is also a director at Birmingham Tech as well. So really glad to have Joel hosting this particular session. So Joel, at this point, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce our panelists.
Thank you very much, Yanis, and a very, very large welcome to all the audience today, and a special thank you to our panelists who you're going to hear from shortly. It's my honor to be hosting today's conversation, particularly a subject that's really passionate and certainly close to my own heart. But I want to first welcome Lee Jones. So Lee is the PS Digital Skills Lead at Microsoft, fantastic organization doing some wonderful things in this space. Marika Beckford, Digital Skills Officer at the West Midlands Combined Authority. So thank you for the work that you do. Chris Meah, founder and CEO at School of Code. Everyone knows Chris. And last but certainly not least, Oyin, CEO and co-founder at Niyo Enterprises and Black Codher, one of the fastest growing coding academies for young Black females. So fantastic panel that we have today. There's certainly going to be a lot of debate and conversation. I expect this to be high energy, impactful. And those who are listening in, you have got the chat function and you've got the Q&A button, so please do use them. The team behind the scenes will be collating the questions, and you'll obviously have an opportunity to question the panelists as we go through. So let's get cracking. How are you all? You all okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to see you, Joel.
Good,
very well.
Good.
I've come down with the flu, but I'm being very heroic. I'm being
Get the violins out.
because I've never been introduced by a president before. So this was an opportunity I couldn't miss. Joel, what an
Well,
honour.
look, well, Chris, we've known each other for many, many years, and you know the passion that you have for this region. It's certainly one that I certainly share. The same that we all share. So, less of the presidency. It's more about what we do for the city here. But I appreciate that nonetheless. I'd like to crack off with a series of questions. I've got a question for each of you. But as we're going through, please feel free to chip in, even if the question is not yours. I think the more we can get a much more rounded debate is the better. But I certainly want to kick off with specific questions for each of you. I'd like to start off with Marika. And Marika, you know, with the question I'm about to ask and with your response, please feel free just to maybe spend 30 seconds or so just to tell people a little bit about what you do over at the MWCA. But the question I would like to ask you is, how can we narrow the digital skills gap across the West Midlands? You know, real broad question, but how can we narrow the digital skills gap across the West Midlands? So please, let's hear your answer.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Marika and I'm the Digital Skills Officer at West Midlands Combined Authority. I also am a tech leader for Silicon Canal, helping to shape the Birmingham ecosystem in the tech space. So, great question, Joel. Very broad, lots of depth to it. And how I can answer that is, one of the ways that we work at the Combined Authority is to connect industry to education. And we work very closely with industry partners, helping them to connect to educational establishments so that they can work in collaboration with each other to shape the curriculum. And then another strand of what we do is also working with training providers, such as Niyo Enterprise, who are helping to retrain people whose jobs are at risk of automation. So very much on the ground, working very much with people who are perhaps not necessarily going through a traditional educational route, but may come through a training provider who can offer something that's a bit more bespoke to them and their experience and circumstances. And that's how we're working. So again, like I mentioned earlier, very much industry connecting to education, very much working again with training providers, and also identifying what those gaps are. You know, it's very much about how can we work with communities, with businesses to identify exactly where those gaps are, and then how can we encourage our partners to help fill those gaps, and what can they provide, those provisions. So we've got Lee on the call today, and we work very closely with Lee and the Microsoft team as they're filling spaces that potentially others may not be. And I'm sure Lee will get into some of the amazing work and initiatives that she's bringing to the West Midlands. But very much so, it's about connecting industry to education, working with training providers, identifying those gaps, and working with key collaborators to help bring that into our region. I can't hear you, Joel.
My apologies, I was muting myself there. Thanks for sharing that, because I think what you've immediately highlighted to me is the importance of inclusion within the actual support structure itself. You know, diversity is not just about what we do externally. It strikes me that the diversity of the partnerships and the collaborations that you're working with and from are, you know, have to almost walk the same path and speak the same truth in terms of the services that you're delivering. So it's great to hear that sense of inclusion within that. And it certainly brings me on to a question for Oyin, really, in terms of her work. And I know you've mentioned her as one of those training providers. But Oyin, in terms of your work, how do you think businesses can create more diverse and collaborative teams? You know, Marika's talked about the inclusion piece as an organizational point, from an organizational point of view. But practically on the ground for businesses, how can they create more diverse and collaborative teams?
Thank you so much, Joel, and it's so good to see everyone here. Just to go straight into it, so my name is Oyin, I run Niyo Enterprise, which is an organization that uses innovative tools to economically empower Black women. I hate poverty, and I really want to do something about it. And so therefore, we decided that I looked, as an economist, I looked at the World Economic Forum, and by 2030, a lot of jobs that Black women are in will be replaced by digital jobs and also automation. And so for us, we wanted to do something about it, so we created the Coding Bootcamp. And I think for businesses, how do they make sure that they're building diverse and collaborative teams? I think we need to come away from tokenism. Black women are not just token people. We're not just going to come into your organization and be a token person. But at the same time, we've actually got to understand the struggles, the challenges that Black women face. We're the most resilient people that I've met. We go through a lot of adversity, but actually we can bring those adversities into organizations and actually help you increase your bottom line. That's number one. And number two, I think it's kind of engaging with organizations like ours who have the capacity to be able to reach out to these young women because we speak their language, we know how to target them, we know where they're talking, we know what group chats they're in, and we're actually able to bring them out of that and actually upskill them. It's just amazing. One of the ladies in our boot camp, her name is Alessandra. So Alessandra is this amazing girl. She loves her makeup, loves her hair, but she's also passionate about tech, and she wants to be able to upskill herself and actually get into tech. And so not looking at a stereotype like a Black woman and thinking, oh my gosh, she's not going to be able to work with us, but engaging with organizations like us who bridge that gap, who can be the bridge between businesses and Black women. So that's the second way. And I think the third way is making sure that we're engaging in conversations, understand the culture, the Black culture, really trying to understand the Black culture, and having open and uncomfortable conversations about these things and about the injustices that we may face, but not just thinking about the injustices, but how we can actually move forward from there, what we can do to do better. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement has really, 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 put some feel in that. And I think it's really positive. And I'm so excited of what we can achieve together. And it's not just about Black women. It's about making sure that every single person, every single race, every single ethnicity is included in the workforce. Our society looks a certain way. The music that we listen to is a certain way. The food that we eat is a certain way. Why can't our culture as a country reflect in our workplaces? Is something wrong somewhere? So it's making sure that we're engaging with different people from diverse backgrounds. So that's why I love what another training provider is doing. I'm so sorry, I can't remember their name, who actually look to engage with refugees, for example, and making sure that they're included in the workforce. Because one of the challenges that they have is make sure that they have a stay in the UK. Getting involved with Chris from School of Code, for example, who has a pool of diverse people who may just want to upskill themselves. So it's Code Your Future. Thank you so much, Yanis. It's Code Your Future. So yeah, engaging with these different training providers as sounding boards. I'm always willing to have conversations. So if anyone wants to have a conversation about this in more depth, I'm here to listen and to feedback.
It's amazing. Well, 100%, Oyin, and the passion you have for your area of work is amazing, and it certainly highlights the need for greater engagement, greater dialogue, greater understanding of cultural intelligence across all communities. You've obviously working in your area. There are other organisations working in others, but it's that inclusiveness as a whole that enables a much more fair and equitable opportunity for all. So I think, your passion is infectious, and that should be right across the board. And I think that's something that we should all celebrate. But I guess on a more practical level, there's also the actual skills. Then it's once we've got those groups and people, regardless of their difference, engaged, how do we then engage them with the skills necessary to drive sustainable change? And that for me leads me to my question to Chris, really, in terms of the actual digital skills that are needed. So Chris, what digital skills do you think are needed the most in order to stimulate productivity and our economy? So both from a regional perspective, but also, national and even global, once we've got this diversity, inclusion supported and moving forward, what digital skills are needed to most stimulate productivity and our wider economy?
Oh, well, that's a simple one. Nice. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, firstly, I'm Chris from the School of Code. We take people from absolute scratch all the way through to professional developer and help them into jobs. It's completely free. And our focus is bringing more and different types of people together to learn, take them through this really intensive process, life-changing process, and get them into tech because, as Owen said, there's tons of jobs and money and opportunity in tech, but it doesn't reach everyone. And I am way more pessimistic. So if I take a long-term view, it's everyone's jobs that are going to be affected. And if you're not in a tech company or at least loosely associated with some sort of technical framework to scale your solution up, what you're going to find is a lot more disruption, a lot more companies overtaking where you are. And so tons of jobs are going to be at risk of automation, changing job landscape we've already seen. COVID's accelerated a lot of those changes, but there's plenty more to come. So I think it's vital that we start thinking about ways that we can get everybody through, or at least checking like what's the realm of possibility, like who can we take through and how can we take somebody that has been stacking shelves in Tesco for the last 10 years, how can we transition them to help in and contribute in this new economy? So so really great hearing the answer so far. In terms of that question that you just asked me, future skills, I guess present skills and future skills, two ways to answer it. Currently, there's a lot of buzz. There has been a lot of buzz about AI. I spent 10 years studying AI. Love the stuff. However, there's a tendency to jump on board before people can even understand what's going on underneath. And I think actually there is an opportunity right now in AI and data science, but before that, there's a gap in terms of people being able to use the solutions that are there already, consume the AI, functionality that's out there. And even before that, there's then a computational thinking or programmatic gap, which is companies just need people that understand how to, solve problems computationally, capture data effectively, automate what can be automated. And once we've got that basic programmatic level of digital skill, which is the new digital literacy, as far as I'm concerned, again, pessimistic, taking a longer term view, but, the days of learning Excel at school and that being useful are sort of over now. Digital literacy is being able to communicate effectively with software and being able to do that in high performance technical teams. So, when we have capability across companies to do that, then we can start analyzing opportunities in terms of capturing data, automating things, and then we layer up and we get to this sort of holy grail of automation, AI, and being able to transform the economy as a whole. But definitely the opportunity is in tech. Tech is probably the only part of the economy that overnight you can kickstart your entire economy. If anything else, you'd have to build a factory and get manufacturers and do logistics and all of these sorts of things. And tech, you need like a couple of laptops, internet connection, and talented people. And so the third one has always been the hardest one of those, broadband problems aside. The third one is always the hardest one of those. And so that's where our focus needs to be, really. Basic programmatic thinking, getting people accessing the skills of the web so that they can create solutions and scale them overnight. So that's the opportunity, really.
I mean, fantastic response, Chris, and appreciate that. And I think what you certainly just flagged in my head is the importance of education for preparation. We can't just jump from where we are to, leveraging digital skills in order to reach this new nirvana of a brand new world. The reality is that not everyone's going to be ready for that jump. And whilst we can create great partnerships and we can have very clear focuses that we want to work on, the reality is that your average person is where they are and they need to be built up to get to a point where they can really provide the real value that they're bringing to the table, whether it's because of their diversity, because of their heritage, because of their experience, because of their career experience, whatever that is. There's still a kind of emotional intelligence, soft skill management, education, then they can then use the tech. And I think for the audience who are on this chat today, on this session today, have a do think about that in your own organizations in terms of the actual reality check of how you actually develop digital skills combined with diversity to make this change. Because it's easy for us all, and I'm sure we've all done it, certainly when we first approach these subjects of being not so much kind of jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, but certainly we fall in love with the novelty of what can be done. But then it's the reality of what that actually means and the implementation of that and the human lives and the journey we need to take them on. And I think that thinking and understanding ought to be interwoven. And I know that's something that you all do in your respective roles and organizations, but especially to the audience listening in, do think about that human journey and that customer experience, quote unquote, but for the very people that you're working with, because that's got to be crucial.
Can I just come back on that for 2 seconds, Joel? Because it was a really interesting point. I think the days of learning something once and then using it for the rest of your life are gone. And we need to get out of this phase where, you know, the story that you always hear in programming is, I was 6 years old and my mum or dad bought me a ZX Spectrum and I took it apart, and, you know, all of that sort of stuff, which is great. And there's a route for those people. But everyone else who wasn't, you know, sort of fell on their feet and had a parent programmer that understood tech was important, or even when you're 18, you know, having to choose your life's path at 18. I mean, I for one was a moron at 18, so, you know, luckily it worked out. But most people don't want their lives panned out by, you know, having randomly chosen some subject and then that's it. So we need to get into this sort of lifelong learning, and a lot of these more intensive training boot camps, more accessible boot camps, that's what they're there to do, really transform people, because every 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you're going to have to reinvent your skills and update them. And that's much more accessible than, you know, a 3 or 4 year university degree that most people can't see themselves in. So,
yeah. No, brilliant point. It is a lifelong investment in, you know, digital skills, and diversity is a lifelong investment. It's not a short-term thing. Which certainly brings me on to Lee, in terms of your work and what you do. And, you know, from a global perspective, right down to local, I'm sure you've seen it all, you've been embedded in it, and the learning is still consistent. But specifically for you, what I'd like to get your views on is, what do you think the role of business and the public sector is in upskilling people? So, you know, you're engaging with everyone from every walk of life, but what's the role of business and the public sector in helping those individuals to be upskilled to maximize their potential?
Cheers, Joel. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, Lee Jones, and I lead on our digital skills from a Microsoft perspective here in the UK. I think if we look at the business all up and we look at all businesses, I think what we need to do in order to support individuals to get the skills that they need is actually to work collaboratively across both public sector and private sector. You know, Chris mentioned around a lot of the activities that are being driven, but in order to enable people to get the skills, it's leveraging a lot of the programs that different organizations are working on, and making sure that there are initiatives that are employer-led and that are relevant for the future world of work. Obviously, you know, we are going to have that continued development. We are going to have that constant lifelong learning aspect as individuals. So I think it's a case of actually, how can we build that? How can organizations build that ethos into what it is that they're actually delivering? And I think when it comes to businesses as well, Microsoft understand that actually it's not necessarily just about the big tech organizations. It's around actually collaborating with all different organizations and making sure that we're taking that insight and really understanding what is it the employers need, what are the skill sets that are actually going to drive success moving forwards, and how can we also influence government bodies and government organizations. There's lots of activity, and obviously with the COVID scenario, there's lots of activity and lots of different funding pots that are currently being negotiated. How can we actually, as business, utilize our voice to make sure that the money is being focused and directed in the right way? But I think from what do businesses actually need to do is the 3 key areas that I think that businesses need to focus on when it comes to delivering success, and digital skills cuts across all 3 of those areas. So the very first one is talent. So the need for responsive leadership, a diverse and inclusive workforce, increased digital skills, creation of an environment in which leaders and employees can work together and innovate. I think that fundamentally is the most important thing. It's how do businesses bring that talent into their organizations? And then along with that is actually how do they invest in technologies that are going to enable them to be more efficient and more collaborative, because that's where that's where individuals will actually learn the skill set by utilizing the technology that the businesses are actually driving. And then again, the third is around that future readiness. Obviously, we don't know now what technology is going to be here in the next 3 to 5 years. We can talk about AI now, we can talk about automation, but actually making sure that you're prepared as an organization to think about and to be able to understand that the world is constantly changing and you can't have a fixed mindset. You have to be thinking around, how do I enable my employees? How do I enable the organization as a whole to actually think about adaptability and moving forwards? And I think as well, the other kind of thing is around culture. That's the big focus the businesses need to consider. And there's lots of initiatives being driven from a government perspective, but actually businesses need to understand that the culture in which they create is what's actually going to drive success for them moving forward. So if as an organization, if you're seeking to attract a mix of talent, both technical and non-technical, it's important to provide opportunities across the board and bring in people from diverse backgrounds. So they haven't necessarily had they've not gone through university, they haven't had all of the opportunities that other people have had. So how do we work with the smaller organizations that are actually delivering that sport? And I think that that's where the cultural element drives the success, and organizations that have inspirational leaders, that have are decisive, that actually have flexible working environments where people can bring the whole selves to the business and actually be able to think in new ways and new creative ways. That's where a business can really help and really focus on the skill side of it. And from a government perspective as well, I think it's utilising a lot of the funding that is available. So again, how do we make sure that if there are shorter, quicker ways in which to support, individuals who are unemployed at the moment, individuals who are furloughed at the moment, what can we do right now immediately that's actually going to help them to get into jobs of the future? So there's going to be a huge exponential growth when it comes to tech jobs. What are the skill sets now that we need to be helping to support those individuals? So there's lots of different things that we could do, and obviously Microsoft are working across different areas with the combined authority. And one of the things that I wanted to know actually was that today, we're announcing our Get On 2021 campaign from Microsoft, which is about supporting 1.5 million people over the next 5 years to get the digital skills that they need, and also connecting 300,000 people into tech jobs. So how do we actually, as an organisation, work with everybody, whether that's the Department for Work and Pensions, KPMG, Unilever, right the way through to all of the individuals on this call, to really drive that tech talent and really drive that pathway. So I just wanted to shout that out to say that that's one of the initiatives that Microsoft are actually doing from an investment perspective.
I mean, that is absolutely amazing, Leah. Thank you to Microsoft for that commitment. And I'm sure we'll get the links from you and share that with the Birmingham tech community for this week. And it's that level of commitment that's needed. You talked a lot about culture, which is absolutely right. Most definitely, if the culture's not right, how can you expect anything to be right? But and all of you, feel free to take yourself off mute, because I'd like to just kind of bring you all into a collective conversation. Because what about the other side of the fence, where you have organizations who are very traditional, very staid, and have been very successful in what they've done, who might feel that there's no need to change? What do we say to them, in terms of the types of partnerships they want to create, the types of people they're attracting, the type of skills that they need, the type of cultures they're creating? What do we say to the organizations who think, well, that's not for us because we're okay, Jack, like we don't need anything else? What would you say to them? And that's for all of you, by the way.
What I would like to say, first of all, globalization is really hitting us in the back more than ever before now, especially with COVID-19. Our world is more and more connected. And so, again, I'm so sorry, I'm going to use this Black Lives Matter movement as another example. And another example I will use is the NSAS movement, which is going on right now in Nigeria, which is all about police brutality. And essentially what the example of that shows us that the world is so connected, and actually people have much power. The voices of people have much power. And so if organizations don't want to change and they want to stick to the old ways, they don't want to include people, or they don't want to be diverse, actually what you start to see is that there will be a decrease in their bottom lines, because people now are putting their money where their mouth is. So when people believe in a certain thing, people buy into that thing as well. So I really just want to encourage organizations who may be resistant to change because of fears of trying to try new things and fears to be innovative, to actually be open to have conversations first about why is the world going the way it is. Or else what you find is that you find a lot of startups overtaking these giants, as we may call them, and actually disruption will start to happen, and they might not be able to kind of keep up with the next phase of the economy.
I mean, it's a fair response, because I was suggesting that globalization works both ways. It's a positive thing for growth, but it could also be a thing that will restrict growth it depends how you see it, the perspective that you have, and the actions that you then take. And going back to Lee's point around culture, if your culture has taken you so far, but you realize that you're operating in a brand new globalized world, if you like, then you're going to have to do something about that. Otherwise, it's funny, one of my mentors always said to me, the moment you stand still, you're actually going backwards, because everything else is moving past you. And for organizations out there who are not thinking about taking those steps, who might be fearful of, there is great support in the region. All these organizations here, our team at Birmingham Tech, we can certainly start connecting you to some of those opportunities if you want to move forward, but you're not sure how to, and there's a genuine passion and a commitment to, but you're just not sure what to do. You're not alone, because quite frankly, the world is moving. And I want to go back briefly to something that Chris said in terms of the actual future readiness. And I think that was linked to what you said as well, also, Lee. The future that we have is one that we may not necessarily know yet, but it's one that we have to be agile and ready for. And so organizations who are in this globalization space, who are not sure, they have to maybe learn how to be a bit more entrepreneurial. Maybe Marika, in terms of the partnerships that you've been working on and working with, have you seen that kind of mindset and entrepreneurial mindset coming through those organizations who may not be sure what the future looks like, but are certainly ready for it?
Most definitely. And I'm seeing a lot more sort of accelerators and initiatives for startup organizations and scale up organizations as well across our region, and specifically in Birmingham. But I just want to touch on what Oyin said about the Black Lives Matter movement and diversity in general. I mean, when we talk about diversity, it's very, very broad. We're not just talking about ethnicity, it's about sexuality, disability, neurodiversity, social mobility. It's all of these things, and gender as well. So organizations, I think, need to recognize that diversity is very broad. They need to understand where they're at the moment and review what is happening in their organizations at the moment. Is their infrastructure right? Is their path to progression for people with talent, do they have things in place for that? And if they don't know where to start, you are right, there are various initiatives. And also it's about understanding, because Lee touched on, it's important for organizations to have a culture and cultivate a culture that encourages talent. If they're not working towards that, you are right, they are going to get left behind. And I really encourage and believe that there are ways that organizations can make that sort of pivot and change to a positive direction. There are toolkits that are available. So I worked with Tech Talent Charter in July on a toolkit, like a playbook that was specifically for Black employees and encouraging Black employees to get to have a better experience in the workplace. in the tech sector, but it actually it's very broad, and it can be used not just for tech organizations, but for a variety of different organizations. There's so many resources that are available. I'll happily share that with Yanis, and he can share it with the rest of the community, but it's a free available resources for you to download. And if you don't know where to start, then these are toolkits that you can access and get a really great starting point up. But I also want to mention, when organizations think, yes, it's great, we're doing fine and we don't need to change, we have a BAME program or a BAME initiative, that's the gripe I have with the use of BAME is that it often categorizes people into one category, and one category that suggests that we all have the same experience. But let's unpick that a little bit. Let's have a look deeper into what BAME actually is in the tech sector, and you'll notice and you'll see various reports about this, especially in the McKinsey report recently, that explains, well, actually the tech sector is hiring a lot more Indian and Pakistani people in tech organizations, as opposed to other ethnic minorities and black people as well. So I think when organizations say, oh yeah, it's fine, we've got a BAME program, we're really pushing BAME, well, are you pushing the individuals that are categorized in that BAME? Are you helping them come through? And I think that's really important. We shouldn't be just blanket casting across that. And organizations, I'm seeing people recognize this, and I'm hopeful for the future about it, and that's why I champion it, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I'm hoping that there will be some really significant changes when it comes to the tech sector, because as Oyin mentioned earlier, it does increase the bottom line. It does fuel creativity. It does improve people's interactions with technology and sharing of experiences. So I'm hoping that will help. But I will share that link.
Yeah, please do, and that's an absolutely it's the right point to make. You know, we have to accept that not everyone is the same, and I know it's an obvious thing, but it's so obviously not taken on board. Whether it's about gender, race, age, sexual orientation, disability, intersectionality between those characteristics, we cannot group everyone in the same space. So when we're talking about culture, we talk about organization, we have to make sure that we know who we're dealing with and why, and go deep before you go wide in terms of supporting diversity. And I'm sure, Chris, you've seen that with the School of Code when you're working with individuals who may not have even been involved in mainstream business support, community support, etc., just been living life. Yet they might come from one diversity characteristic which has subsectors, which have differences and challenges within that. And, you know, so I guess, you know, as we start to think towards digital skills and diversity and culture and growth and all the great things that we can do, we also have to bear in mind that we have to know who we're talking about and connect with them on their needs. It's so important in an individual basis. Conscious that questions are coming through the chat, please keep them coming. We'll go to an audience Q&A in about 2 minutes.
Can I just pick up on what you said, John?
Yeah, sure. Go on, Chris. Go ahead.
Move on.
Go ahead. Yep.
All right, because I thought, yeah, Marika made a really good point in terms of, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the BAME, I mean, I understand there was a push for it and it was useful, but in reality, what you're doing there is just pitching white and non-white people. And that's just such a weird way to see the world, isn't it? Like everyone, like you say, what we want to do is help everyone. There's so many categories of people, and even categories don't make sense when you break them down into the individual. What people have is a story. Like everyone's got a unique story. Doesn't matter what you look like. If that same story of you know, going into tech, you know, universities are great examples of this. Trying to like, you know, edge up numbers of females and edge up numbers of minorities as they see it. And but if the same story is, well, I've been coding since I was 6 years old, and you know, I'm from this sort of background, middle class background, and then really are you branching out? You know, who's got access to that program? Probably not. What you're probably doing there is just finding people with the same path. You're not expanding it. So I think if you do want to attract more and different types of people in, you've got to understand, like, it's about sharing perspectives. and everyone's got their unique perspective. No two people are alike. One person can't be diverse. You know, it's impossible. You're one person, it's two people. They are diverse. It depends. They might not be very diverse. They might be twins, right? But they're going to be some differences. And then you just want to get more and different types of people into that to really, you know, get that cognitive diversity, diversity of experiences, diversity of ethnicities and genders. And it all plays into it. But it's about, you know, individual stories being shared there. And then just one thing.
Reflecting society.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so that's why the School of Code is representative. So it started as an experiment. You know, we're going to run it for free. We're going to not check if nobody has to have seen a line of code before. All we want to see is, are they motivated and are they nice people? Because I had to spend 16 weeks in a room with them. And those two things are like cut across all demographics, don't they? Like there's no demographic that has the monopoly on motivation or being nice. So what we saw is just, you know, 50-50 gender split, age range of 18 to 60, demographics matching the West Midlands, Birmingham, which is pretty diverse. And, you know, each time applications have kept that diverse range. So that sort of dispels the myth of people aren't interested in tech. They just don't see a path that's right for them. And that's the big thing for me about bringing different types of people together. I mean, when we talk about soft skills are the ability for you to navigate other people's personalities. Like that's what it is. If you talk to people just like you, that's what we do all the way through school. You know, whether they look like you or sound like you, your parents probably all have the same sort of job. You've had the same sort of upbringing. You're the same sort of age. So you're going to be able to talk in the same sort of way, similar at university. And then you get to the world of work and it's like completely different, right? You're speaking to people that you might not speak to. So that's the thing I really like about School of Code. You put people in a room together that wouldn't even see each other on the bus, you know, like they would never be in a room together. And then you just put them through really intense training. You know, they're working together, they're learning together. And that's how you embed those soft skills. And I think that's what we need a little bit more of, understanding how to work together with all different types of people, rather than just bringing one perspective to the table.
I would like to add a little bit to that in terms
Go ahead, Owen, yep.
in terms of this thing about, you know, we want to bring people together and make sure we have different backgrounds. I totally agree with that. And I think in the long term that works. But I'm coming from like a Nigerian girl who emigrated from Nigeria to the UK accidentally at 13 from like a boarding school where everyone's black. And there's like this token mixed race going on, and got dropped in a white school. And actually, not everyone was like me. Not everyone looked like me. I was the token person, and so in a lot of Black women, we have to be in rooms and be the only ones in the room. And so for us, when we're designing our course, we make sure that the content reflects their experiences, because you know, in school, in the workplace, a lot of the stuff that's covered probably doesn't reflect the experience of Black women. People are only just about understanding Black hair. People are only just about understanding the difference between jollof rice or dumpling. I don't know, like people are only just understanding these cultures. And so I think what you're doing at School of Code is fantastic in terms of make sure that there's different people. But I think it's important that we highlight the different stories of these different people. But I mean, the Black Coded Bootcamp for Black women in our cohort is almost like healing, because for so long we're like the only ones and no one gets it. I say one thing, I love plantain and no one gets it. You know, I love jollof rice and no one gets it. For some reason, for the first time ever, whilst working with a group of people, they get it. And so, you know, there's so much power in people getting you and understanding you, and I think it actually plays along with your productivity and effectiveness at work. You know, I used to work in a Fortune 500 company, and I remember the VP of sales for this whole company, I'm not going to mention the company, said that my hair looked like an ugly bow tie, and the Nigerian in me wanted to talk back and clap back, but then I said, you know what, that's interesting that you thought that. And actually I felt very let down, you know, despite the amount of work I had done in the organization. It actually affected my productivity and effectiveness. So this thing about humans connecting to humans is so important, but that we need to understand each other more, and we need to understand
100%.
the experiences a lot more. So yeah, that's what I'll add to that.
No, I think that is absolutely such a spot on point. And I want to just give the audience some time just to kind of fielded some of their questions, but I think what you just highlighted there is really essence of real great diversity in this digital and tech space, just human to human connection.
And having safe spaces.
Having safe spaces to create that and to curate that over time, I think is so important. You're absolutely right, Marika. Yanis, if you could just go to a couple of questions that might have come through.
Absolutely, yes. So we've got a question here from Alan. Let me just pull it up again. Where are we? Yes, with many large organizations, it is rarely the tech. There are plenty of capable engineers from all walks of life. It's often the leadership transition and the speed of change of business models. There's such a broader understanding of how tech and businesses work together to drive success. So, how are we giving tech experts business experience and helping business experts a broader understanding of what tech can develop? So I suppose the question is very much around, yes, we're working hard to bring people into tech, but how do you then actually nurture those people in the right way to make them the leaders of tomorrow? And I know, actually, speaking to a number of people on this panel, that you're all very passionate about that. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get lots of answers to that.
But if we could keep the answers brief, that'd be ideal. But thank you, Lee. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, can I pick that up? I think, great point there, Alan. It is a case of, there's lots of talent out there. I think one of the things that we've probably not picked up on that I think is relevant to this is actually redeployment of talent across an organization. It's not necessarily just bringing new skills into an organization. It's actually, how do we get people to get the skills that are relevant to make sure that they can stay in that organization and can continue to grow. There's lots of work for, I speak to public sector organizations every single day. And one of the things that we speak to them around is actually, how do we drive that conversation from a business leadership perspective? The business leaders know the strategy, they know what they're trying to do, and then potentially the IT teams know the capability of the technology. How do we bring those two elements together? And there's lots of different resources that are available from a technical perspective to help people get business skills, from a business perspective to help people understand the technology. And again, more than happy to share those. But I think it's important that actually, when we are looking at this skills conversation, one, in order to be successful in the future, businesses need to disrupt themselves. It's not necessarily just about entrepreneurs being disruptive. It's about how can you have that innovation within an organization to actually disrupt your own business model so that you then can be successful. And the way to do that is to actually use the resource of your employees, the talent, to be able to understand, right, actually, what are the things that we need to do that can continue us kind of moving forward. So it's that mindset and the culture.
Yeah, and I like that idea of the redeploying of talent. I totally agree on that. I remember, I was the diversity officer for golf, which, as you can imagine, as a 30-year-old black guy in golf was a very interesting journey. But that's exactly what we did. We looked at what talent we had in different parts of the sport and then engaged that in different areas, and we started to see that diversity coming through. And it just made me realize that if you have that human-to-human spirit, as people said earlier, you find how entrepreneurial and how innovative people actually are, because they've got those skills from experiences that are not necessarily born in the workplace, but they bring it to the workplace, and you learn more about people and what they can bring through that. So just wanted to add to that, but appreciate that.
Joe, just on that as well, I think, we're talking about skills here, but ultimately it's about people. It's about people. What do they want to do in their lives? How do we give them opportunities? How do we give them chances? We can have this conversation. I know that this is around skills and diversity, but actually the focus is on, how do we make significant change in people's lives to kind of drive that better future, be that across the diversity conversation or not. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I actually love about having these conversations, is that it's all about making that difference. It's literally a case of, helping people to follow their own dreams and to go on that journey. And technology is one way of doing that.
That's why today's People and Culture Day, because that's what it's about ultimately, 100%.
Yeah, there was a report. There was a report by Good Things Foundation, who are they champion digital inclusion, and they said that one of the barriers to people adopting a digital skill or wanting to learn a digital skill was motivation. I just want to touch back on what Chris said earlier. when you're learning a digital skill, it's consistent lifelong learning. So what we have to encourage organizations and our partnerships to embed empowerment to their employees, to the workforce, so that they're empowered, that they're inspired, and that their aspirations are raised to continuously learn. I think that's a really key point when we're working into sort of paths to progression and building the next sort of wave of tech talent within an organization. So it's really about empowering, it's about motivating and raising the aspirations of people in your organization.
So again, it's about that people-centered approach. It's that human experience, it's that individual, it's taking them for who they are, not what they are, and helping them to become whomever they want to be. You know, it's that constant engagement. You know, if you have got that link to that report, Marika, if you can maybe put that in the chat, that'd be amazing. We can share that with the group as well. Yanis, any other questions that come through?
Yeah, we have indeed. So we've got a question here from Dominique from Hairpop. Fantastic organisation, by the way, doing some great stuff about kind of products for black women and their hair. So how do you think we can work on building brand partnerships rather than working in silos? Unfortunately, BAME doesn't benefit people who are the least advantaged from this category.
Interesting question. Very interesting question. I mean, in terms of those who have created partnerships, how have you created some of those brand partnerships? And is there, you know, insights or learning that we could maybe share, Lee?
I mean, we've got, you know, like I said before, my role in the organisation is actually around how do we drive the social value, and the only way that we're going to do that is actually by working with organisations that have their feet on the ground. You know, Microsoft are a global company and we have lots of resources, but in order to actually be able to impact the individuals like across the West Midlands, we have to work with organisations. You know, we work with the Combined Authority. We're looking at how can we drive some of the initiatives around female and getting the resources into their hands. And I think it's a case of understanding where the alignment is from an organisation and making sure that, again, we all come together. It's that collaboration piece that I mentioned right at the beginning, and, you know, utilising organizations like, you know, the Combined Authority or Birmingham Tech Weeks to reach out and say, actually, that, you know, there are big organizations like Microsoft who want to get involved with these organizations that are on the ground that are doing some great stuff. You know, Chris is doing some fantastic stuff, and we have access to information that can add value to everything that's happening on the ground. So I think it's, you know, reach out, ask those questions. The amount of people that I get reaching out to me on LinkedIn and different things, and, you know, it's quite nice just to say, oh, check this out, or check this company out. They're doing some really cool stuff in your area. So
is this about overcoming the fear of just asking the damn question? Because quite often, particularly when you're a small business as well, and you want to work in a strategic way of organizations, you might think, oh, will I seem like I don't know what I'm doing, or inadequate, or, you know, that sense of vulnerability or imposter syndrome, whatever it is. There's a negativity sometimes in approaching organizations. So I just say, just ask the damn question.
I think it's perception sometimes, isn't it? You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm just a person like you are, like everybody else. And if you don't ask, the answer's always no. So the answer might not necessarily be yes, but if you don't ask the question.
I love that. If you don't ask the question, the answer's always no. Love that. So we've got probably 6-7 minutes before we finish for today. I just want to take, you know, one more question from the audience. Then I'll ask you all just to maybe give us a parting thought or a parting insight from your experience of what you've heard. I'm happy to kind of sum up a couple of points as well, and we'll wrap up that way. So, Yanis, is there a final question?
Indeed, almost like magic. So it's actually directed at Marika, but I guess it can be answered by everyone. So it's Marika, based on your work across the West Midlands, how does someone new to the region get visibility of what is going on and what the need is in the region? That's from Alan again. I mean, I guess kind of one of the things that I'll say to that is, it's something that Birmingham Tech would like to kind of do more of, really. And we're early on in our journey, but we very much want to connect the dots and kind of make visible what's going on across the region. You know, all the fantastic initiatives, all the fantastic boot camps, and all the resources that are available. But it is going to take a massive collaborative effort. But again, kind of keen to hear from the panelists on their views and how we better do that, really, because this should be a catalyst to kind of drive more change across the entire region.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Alan. And so with the Silicon Canal movement, with the Birmingham Tech movement, those are really key places in Birmingham to probably start out at. You'll see a list of the Silicon Canal tech leaders on the Silicon Canal website. And you can reach out to us via Twitter, and we're very much the plugs. So we definitely like to plug people into the right places and very much connectors. So please feel free to reach out. If it's in terms of like perhaps you wanting to get advice about your tech startup, or you just want to know more about tech events that are happening, then again, it's probably best to take a look at the contact us via Twitter. So my Twitter is at Marika_B, B-E-E. And we can reach out to you straight away. It's not a problem. We're very welcoming, and our slogan actually is for Silicon Canal is, you know, it's tech and you belong. So, and tech belongs here, and so do you. So absolutely, we definitely welcome that and welcome you.
No, that's brilliant, Marika. And I think, yeah, let's really kind of help businesses to really engage with that support. And then obviously, you know, as people just saying in the chat there's the growth companies as well, the growth hubs, Innovation Alliance, Tech Nation. So there's a number of great organizations out there who are committed to the region and supporting the growth of our businesses in this space and in others. So the more collaborative we can be, the more inclusive, the better. So thank you to the audience for your questions. I know there are oodles more in there, and we will keep sharing information where we can, and please keep attending some of the other sessions for this week. I'd just like to start to kind of round off the session by asking the panel, just for a final thought, really, you know, good old fashioned pitch fashion, you know, give me kind of 10, 20 seconds on your final thoughts around digital skills and diversity. I'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, so 20 seconds on digital skills and diversity. I think the thing that I'd say is, like, the worldview should be most people are nice people and they're doing their best to get by. And if you speak to most business owners, they'd say, I'll hire anyone with the right skills. No, I'll hire anyone with the right motivation and aptitude. But the reality in tech is there's a skills barrier. And so what we need to do is really help people cross that threshold, because this stuff is really hard to learn. It's a lonely journey. And if you just leave it up to like people who can happen to learn online, you're only going to get a certain type of people through. So we need to bring more people together, learn in teams, understand how to work in a high performance tech team. And that itself will jettison more and different types of people into tech. So I think that's probably what I'd say. You know, the way to broaden your perspective is share it with others and bring as many people in as you can.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Oyin?
So thank you for that. Now I have to like think about what I have to say. So I think I think my closing thoughts are diversity and inclusion cannot just be like a blanket statement. It can't just be a tokenism thing. It has to actually reflect our society. So any organizations who are willing to have conversations about how they can increase diversity and inclusion, but from a way where you actually care about the people, I'm open to having those types of conversations. Also, also increasing the skills availability for Black women is really important, because a lot of us are in like hospitality roles, which are probably going to be taken out by automation soon. And so that's why we're here. Yeah, essentially those are my last closing thoughts.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Marika?
Collaboration is key. That's my big slogan, big statement. And I also think as well, don't be afraid to use the word Black when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, and specifically around ethnicity and race. Just don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to understand and become an ally to those who don't have the same opportunities as you may have. So, I think that's where collaboration and partnership comes in, making sure that you're advocating and championing education for good and championing technology for good. And I also think that partnerships is a really great way to help scale and grow your ideas, and innovation is very important as well. And one of the ways that the West Midland Combined Authority can help support you with that is to get in touch with the West Midland Combined Authority through our Twitter, or through directly to myself or the digital skills team. And we'd love to share how we can work with you and collaborate with you and your projects. And also just to keep in touch with us via our newsletter, which comes out quarterly, and you can sign up to that via the WMCA website. And yeah, I'd love to keep in touch with you and continue the conversation.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Marika. And last but certainly not least, Lee, your final thoughts, please.
I know we're massively out of time, so I keep it super short. So we have this week, I know obviously it's Birmingham Tech Week, but we also have Envision UK, Microsoft Envision UK, where we've got our CEO, Satya Nadella, who's coming over. So some of the sessions this afternoon. So I've posted the link in there if anyone wants to join and understand kind of from a broader perspective what we're doing at Microsoft and how we're trying to drive success across businesses. And then the second one is opportunity.linkedin.com. We've analysed the top 10 roles across the digital economy from the LinkedIn data, and we've created free pathways. So in line with all the boot camps, all the activity and everything else that you're doing, again, the link's in the chat, go on there, you can get some free, really, really great content, and it'll get you to that point. And I think from a business perspective, one of the things that Chris said before is fundamental. It shows that you have motivation and ambition. If you can go out and say, I've dedicated time to get these skills, then business leaders, they want you to come into their organizations because they know that that's how they're going to grow. So yeah, two things from my perspective.
No, and both of them are absolutely valid and amazing. I thank you for Microsoft's commitment to working with us locally in the region as well, being such a wonderful organization. So we truly appreciate that.
Right.
For me, you've said it all. You've been a fantastic panel. Your input has been amazing. We've had passion, we've had information, we've had links, we've had genuine drive. But I think one thing that certainly shone out for me is the importance of just that human experience. And behind your organizations, you are just great people doing great things in the region. So on behalf of Birmingham Tech, we thank you for your commitment to the region and to what you're doing. And we look forward to championing you further. And I'll hand back to Yanis. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, just echo Joel's points really. I think such an important session, so much passion, and these are the type of conversations we need to have to, move forward, frankly. So I think this isn't just a one-off conversation. We need to carry on doing this, and I think that's the only way we will force change through. So yeah, thank you to kind of Joel. Thank you to all of the panelists for being part of this, and thank you to all the delegates for kind of joining us and being such active participants in the conversation as well.